Yes, this is Tomiko Dagan. I'm a Senior Vice President of the Universal Peace Federation USA and the IAPD Peace Forum for US. IAPD, in short, which is for short, the Interreligious Association for Peace and Development. IAPD organizes various programs such as bring together leading experts to explore the prospect for improving relations, not only between the Koreans, but also among the other stakeholder countries in the region. The forum will focus on track to diplomacy, commitment to peace on the unification of the Korean Peninsula. So this soft power or track two diplomacy approach to peace aims to help bring about the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula with a dialogue, scholarly research, and civic society initiatives. We have high hopes that bring webinar series will be an excellent opportunity to gain more knowledge about the issues and the challenges, and ultimately provide us with hope for building one Korea. So I would like now invite our today's program moderator, Dr. Michael Jenkins, the president of Universal Peace Federation International and the chairman of UPF North America. Dr. Jenkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice President Tomiko Duggan. Thanks for the great work with the Interreligious Association for Peace and Development. The Universal Peace Federation is an NGO with general consultative status at the United Nations. And what we work on is very broad spectrum of leadership and events that help to bring the principles of peace into the discussion and into the functioning of our volunteer work and social work, as well as the work of governments. We have an International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace. We have 7,000 current members of parliament throughout the world, 100 nations. And we also have heads of state. And most important, one of them is the Association for Peace and Development, the religious leaders. So we're honored to present to you today outstanding people of faith who also see the value of bringing that dimension of faith and also the dimension of interfaith dialogue and the importance of also honoring God and respecting the fact that we can really embrace all religions, all people, all races, all nations. Our first speaker today is Dr. John Jackson. He's the chairman of the American Clergy Leadership Conference in America. 30,000 clergy are associated with ACLC, and he's a tremendous leader coming out of Texas. I've worked with him side by side in many years. I was the co-chairman emeritus from years ago with Archbishop George Augustus Stallings Jr. So I want to welcome Dr. Jackson. Thank you for being with us. We're very inspired by your leadership, and I understand you're creating a big move of the Holy Spirit across America, a revival, and also calling people to come to Korea for the affirmation of marriage and blessing. So thank you, Dr. Jackson. Welcome.
Oh, it's good to be with you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you so much for having us here today. The American Clergy Leadership Conference is really excited about what's on the horizon. And it's just an honor to be with y'all and to be sharing with you today. I'm very happy to share our thoughts and my thoughts on what clergy can do from the United States to foster peace and reunification on the Korean Peninsula. It is so, I was just doing a little study myself the other day about what some of the problems might be that we're facing. And one of the biggest challenges that I see that we're facing is that the Korean people, I was looking at a study that was done by a university in Seoul. It's the Seoul National University and the Institute for Peace and Unification Studies. They just did a survey of the Korean people from ages of 20 to 74. And that's a broad spectrum, right? Big range of people. And that group, they say that they believe that it's somewhat necessary to reunify the world, this war-torn, and divided peninsula. Only somewhat necessary. And we're talking about less than half of those who were surveyed. Less than half believe that it's somewhat necessary, not absolutely necessary. The total number was 44% of the Korean people, that age range, believe it's somewhat necessary. And then they did it. They further polling that group of people. They did a poll with the 20-year-old to 39-year-old, and listen to the difference. There was nearly 43% of the respondents believed that South Korea, it's not really necessary. And then there was another 34% that said not at all necessary. So we're talking about 77% of Koreans ages 20 to 39, they believe that it's really not that important that the peninsula is reunited, comes together in unity. That statistic blew my mind. And the more I studied about it, I realized that what's happening is a really an amazing thing. What's happening is time is really an important issue on the peninsula, because there are fewer and fewer and fewer people living today that remember when the peninsula was a one country, well, not divided. So these people are in their 70s and 80s now, and they're passing on. So there are fewer and fewer and fewer people who remember that this is not just a nation divided, but a people, a family divided. Many families are in the north, have family in the south, and they haven't seen each other in over 75 years. So what can we do? When we realize that time is of an essence, because the further we move along in time, the fewer and fewer people have any memory, any physical memory of it. And the young people have no memory at all of it. They just know what they've been told, and they're losing their ambition or their desire to reunite their country. So what can the clergy do? Well, the very first thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate Christian clergy. From the American Clergy Leadership Conference, what we're trying to do is help the American clergy, the American pastors, and by the way, that's all denominations. It's not just Christians. It's many different denominations and other people of other faiths. We're trying to help them understand that America has a responsibility here. And for some people it's obvious, right? But for many others, it's not their daily bread. They're not eating this. They're not chewing on this subject every day themselves. They're living their lives and so forth. And this is, again, 70 some odd years ago these things have happened. Even our Korean War veterans, there are fewer and fewer and fewer, harder to find. And so even in America, they call the Korean War the forgotten war. But trust me, when you go to Camp Casey in Korea, it's in the forefront of their mind. American servicemen are stationed in Korea for a reason, right? And so Americans need to understand that we really have a dog in this fight. It's important to us, and we also have responsibility. And when I speak to the clergy, when I talk to them about this thing, they usually don't understand our responsibility there. Why don't we just let the Koreans take care of the Koreans? But actually, it's never been the case. And it's because of our faith that Korea is an important country to us. The Korean Peninsula has, 50 million people? Used to, a decade ago, 20 million of those were Christian. Now it's somewhere around 12 million. Still, the number one religious body in South Korea is Christianity. it is and it has Korean, an Asian nation, is a Christian nation still today, and that Christian nation has actually been looking to American Christianity for leadership for years. So we're educating clergy. We're educating them about the America's responsibility, because quite frankly, it was an American president who sealed the deal of the DMZ, and that we would not march north any further. And so we bear some burden. We definitely bear a burden of responsibility there. And we weren't the only nation fighting. There were 16 allied nations. I know that's true, but we were certainly the primary force. And Douglas MacArthur, our famous general on the American from America, was leading that Pacific work, the work of the military there. So we definitely bear that responsibility. That's why we're still there. So when the clergy hear this and they realize, and of course I don't have time today to go into that kind of depth, but when we spend a little time with the clergy and they help them to understand this responsibility that the United States bears, then they get it. And then what can they do? The next question is, okay, so now I understand, what can we do? We decided that the thing to do, and our leadership, by the way, the founders of ACLC, Reverend Sum Young Moon and Dr. Hak Jahan Moon are the founders of ACLC. Though they, because of their leadership, we realized that what we can do is we can work with Christian clergy in South Korea to help them find the spirit and the determination to encourage and be supporters of reunification, understanding helping with America's help, with the clergy from America. We can help them get that responsibility, understand it, and then work with those pastors. What would they do? Well, our political leaders have a certain power and authority, but when the Christian and when the religious body of people come together, not only Christian, but the religious people come together, they can offer spirit, support of the heart and soul, and which helps us follow through with our determination as political leaders, as you well know. So this is what we're trying to do: keep our spiritual prayer. We're all praying for this reunification for the people of Korea and the peninsula, and we're also working together with other clergy in South Korea to be a positive influence towards all of their political leaders, not just the president, but all of their political leaders on the Korean side and also the American side. This is, if we stand together, work together, we know the power of unity. This is what we're trying to do. So there's a lot more to it, but that's it in a nutshell. And I really believe it. It helps. Especially in Korea, this is the number one thing that we believe we can do here in America as clergy in America, is to support the Korean Christians and other religious leaders to really give life and longevity to this determination to bring about peace and unity on the Korean Peninsula. And together, I know we'll win.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. That was excellent. And we'll have time for questions and answers after our next speaker. Our topic today is Track 2, Diplomacy, Commitment to Peace, Challenges and Hope for Unification on the Korean Peninsula. We've done a number of Track 2 efforts, maybe over the last 20 years, with faith leaders, but also with diplomats and members of the U.S. Congress, as well as international leaders. And there's been collaboration with the American Clergy Leadership Conference. We've also collaborated with the UPF through various organizations, and it's always been very, very important. Track 2 especially, meaning that it's not really government to government. It's behind the scenes. It's a commitment that's also off the record many times. We've done it with the Washington Times. We've run a number of fact finders to Korea. We met the people with the foreign ministry, with the president's office. I met the president last 2 years ago, and it's really important because that gives a very special relationship and friendship and an exchange. We were shocked when we met the foreign minister that the number of cyber attacks on South Korea is unbelievable. It's like, many thousands per day attack the banks, attack the military, attack all institutions, all ministries of the Republic of Korea. And the North Koreans, young North Koreans who are trained, 18 and a little older, they become really proficient at hacking and breaking in. And of course, they get tremendous benefits for doing that. North Korea is really in poverty, but the people around Pyongyang, a number of people, a couple 100,000 who are part of the core government, live pretty nicely. And then you've got these young people, if they hack into different institutions, they can really get a tremendous boost and lifestyle and everything. It's really unreal. So they're highly motivated. So I'm really excited to introduce to you our next speaker, Miss Kimberly Lowe. Ms. Lowe is the Korean Unification Education Council member for DC, Maryland, and Virginia, which is directly under the Minister of Unification for the Republic of Korea. And we are very impressed with your work, Ms. Lowe, and we welcome you at this time. Ms. Kimberly Lowe, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for all the work that you're doing. There are people suffering around the world. There are people praying around the world, just asking for some type of help. And you all have answered that calling with all of the work that you're doing. My title is a long one. I'm actually the first English speaker on a Korean council, which I don't really speak Korean except for a few words. So it makes meetings very long. And I've yet to have found an app that translates properly and quick enough. She's good. She's fine. But anyway, so yes, my name's Kimberly Lowe. I'm on the Korean Unification Education Council of Virginia, Maryland, and DC. The priority of the Republic of Korea, of South Korea, is unification. It is really one of their largest priorities right now for the country. And there's a lot of work that we have ahead of us, but I feel confident that we can have positive changes. So I'm going to talk about what the North Korea problem is briefly and what the solutions are. I'm very action-oriented and very good at solving problems. No diplomacy has really worked in North Korea. I still strongly believe that money talks, and that by changing and offering changes to the North Korean economy, that we can then make strides with some type of opening up talks between North and South Korea. There's not enough open communication, and I really think that this is a very possible change. The other problem with diplomacy that we have here in America is that we do not do enough with human rights. One time we did some human rights in Russia under the Reagan administration. There were huge changes in the Soviet Union during that time, but human rights continues to not be any type of focus. One of the largest issues with North Korea globally is North Korea being a national security issue due to their nuclear warheads in their program. Their constitution actually says that it wants them to make as many warheads as possible. We don't even know how many nuclear warheads they have. There's around 20 to 60. We don't know who they are selling them to. We do know that they are going off to jihadists. That's Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and they're also have been giving different things to Russia. So it's a huge national security issue. On top of that, Kim Jong-un spends more money setting off missiles just for fun and spends more money on missiles than feeding his own people. That's the huge problem. There's no care for people. They are thinking and they are projected to make 200 nuclear warheads by 2027. Now, there has been a large goal over many decades to disarm countries. However, because of bad American foreign policy, the chances of us disarming other countries at this point is not very realistic for a couple of reasons. We were able to disarm Gaddafi long time ago, but after he gave up his nuclear weapons program, the United States State Department came in, murdered him. So since then, the chance of another country saying, sure, I'm going to give up my nuclear weapons, everything's going to be fine, is completely unlikely. The second issue is that the United States is in the midst of de-dollarization. The United States has lost its clout as a world power, particularly as we have economic formations of things such as BRICS. BRICS is going to make a larger level playing field financially as far as countries being able to sustain themselves and being able to trade. They're going to have a lot of more resources. They're going to be gold backed. They actually have a lot of money left over, unlike the United States, which has a massive amount of debt currently. So because of these types of economic situations, we are losing our ability to sanction other governments, including with their nuclear program. So this is the danger with North Korea. The other things that I find incredibly childish is the fact that North Korea is sending trash over to South Korea, and South Koreans are trying to send pamphlets, and it's really, a lot of this stuff is very childish with the missiles and the trash. And again, I think at some point, I think really talking is possible, particularly if it comes to money and economics. North Korea is run by coercion, intimidation, and surveillance and reporting with generational punishment. Here's one of your largest problems. You can't get away with anything in your own country because your own family is going to tell what you're doing. And there's a hate of South Koreans, and the South Koreans were taught that the North Koreans were monsters. It's kind of like my family settled Virginia in the 1600s. I'm in Virginia. We had the Civil War in the 1800s, but I was told I couldn't marry someone from up north because they're a Yankee. So, you know, you have this generational problem that doesn't seem to end. And I think that's something that we can even work on stateside. We have to change the perceptions of how they feel about each other. And one of my favorite sayings, I love this. I heard this at a really cool conference. We need to think of unification as inevitable, but what is more realistic is decentralization, not denuclearization, and integration rather than unification. So it's going to happen, and it needs to happen, but will North Korea continue as a sovereign type of state, type of situation, but more open and start to do something about their human rights? I think that we can definitely move in that direction. So here are some solutions. A lot of these solutions are coming from the North Korean, you guys know these guys, the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. They do a lot of work,
Yes.
Rep Scarlato.
Yeah, sure.
I've added to some of the stuff that they say because I don't know, I'm pretty good at solving problems. So we need people in office that understand the Kim regime. We have a lot of people that don't understand it. They don't understand what's happening in North Korea. They don't take time to think about it. We have to deal with human rights, which we're not doing. We have to assign real resources to organizations that are running organization or information campaigns into the country. So currently, there's so many NGOs out there that are sending information over to North Korea because the North Koreans have been taught that this is a normal way of life, and they don't like, you know, the outside world. And you know, what bothers me about this approach is the people that end up, you know, in a hard labor camp because they got hold of some information. So this is what's been happening. Most people feel like this is the solution. I'm not the largest fan of this because I don't think that children should be in hard labor camps or senior citizens or anyone. It's just a scary situation. The issue with the repatriation of North Korean refugees, they need to stop going back into North Korea. Committees here have suggested that they come here into the US, but I can tell you right now that the immigration issues in America are a nightmare. Our immigration laws have not been updated since the 1990s. There's a very limited number of people who can come in. So that may be less realistic, but I think that there's other countries that we can work with where they can go to a safe location instead of going back into North Korea. We need to reauthorize the Korean Human Rights Act that was signed into law well, I guess it was just reintroduced basically in 2023. And it does all the things that we were just discussing, which is great. It's going to provide humanitarian assistance to North Koreans inside North Korea, provide grants to private profit organizations to promote human rights, democracy, rule of law, and the development of a market economy in North Korea, increase the availability of information inside of North Korea, and provide humanitarian or legal assistance to North Koreans who have fled. We also need to deter and contain Kim Jong-un. I'm actually meeting with the Minister of Defense and the President this year to see if they'll let me go in as a member of the council, but also as an American, which makes me kind of in a different position because I still think that you can talk. I think we need to start talking, and they're not talking. It's pretty terrible. We have to enhance our missile defense. Missiles are very outdated. They don't do well with long range. Their accuracy is really not that great. They're taking a lot of missiles and just repurposing them and putting them back together again. It's extremely, extremely expensive missiles. Develop alliances to the global south. I'm going to be more specific about that. And then we are currently being dismantled as in head of the rest of the world with the diplomacy right now. So we need to take that position back. One of the things that I really saw listening to North Koreans testify is that they're so dependent upon the government that they don't know how to be self-sufficient. They don't know how to get food for themselves. They don't know how to have a baby outside of a hospital. There were times when we had some type of traditional medicine where you did not have to be 1,000,000,000% reliant upon the government to take care of your every single need. And so people in North Korea need to be taught some type of sufficiency. So they need help improving their healthcare, their food production, self-sufficiency. Reopening communication and talks between North and South Korea instead of doing a lot of the things that are currently happening. Assist them with improving their economy. I think that's going to be the really important aspect to changing all this is say, okay, this is the investment that we can bring in. You could be at a different place in the world. Wouldn't you want that? You would think. So I'm creating some cool stuff, and I'd love it if you guys would like to get involved. I'm creating something called the Trans-Pacific Alliance. If you look at a map, which we don't have, well, we kind of have right behind there, but that doesn't work. The South China Sea is a real issue, and we only go to countries in the South China Sea in times of war. We need to start talking now. We need to connect our leaders in government on both sides so that we can communicate. Sometimes even if you just talk about cheese, I've been spending a lot of time in Europe trying to reconstitute a partnership between members of government. And they said, no one ever comes from the US to talk to us. We would be happy just to talk about simple things. So we have to open up lines of communication in those areas as well. So my suggestion is to have a summit once a year here in one of the congressional buildings, and then to have a summit in one of the South China Sea countries. And some of the areas that could be discussed between each member of government is business, foster economic development, counterterrorism. That's a really big one that a lot of people want to talk about in government. Security, like combating transnational organized crime and human trafficking. Migration, which is another big issue for most governments. Human rights. We're going to start sneaking in human rights with our diplomacy. We may have to talk about business before we can get to it, but we're going to do it. And then maritime domain awareness and country sovereignty. And when I say maritime domain, it's because everybody's fighting over all the islands and everything. And it's always chaos there. So these countries would include South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Brunei, Borneo, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Australia, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. But it's going to be fun because people are going to be talking. So I am going to get around to what religion has done as well for the country, because that's such an important aspect, because I feel like that's where you really get stuff done. And it's so difficult with governments to get things done. So my vision for the Korean Unification Education Council would include communities here in Virginia, Maryland, and DC. So if anyone wants to help with any of these projects, let me know, because sometimes you have to start local to go bigger. The council's been around for a long time, but honestly, people in the Korean community complain and say they don't do anything. And so my suggestion was that they need to start going out into the Korean community more and be present at events, because we're right here at DC. We've got the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. We've got the Korean Defense Veterans Association. There's a Korean Veterans Association. There's lots of huge Korean churches, the Korean Community Center, and other NGO events regarding North Korea. I mean, it's continually ongoing, but they haven't had a presence there to build these relationships up in the community. There needs to be education of Korean youth, because my grandfather died in the Korean War. That's how I got more involved with Korea issues. And the older generation understands the sacrifice, and the younger generation doesn't understand much of anything. And many were born here and they speak Korean, but they lack any knowledge on what's happening between North and South Korea, just like you were just discussing. So we have to work on educating our youth. There's actually there's a really nice man who's a journalist here who wants to create a monument for North Koreans. I think that's a really nice project. And that's for a lot of North Koreans who lost their life with everything. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people that are imprisoned. Congressional briefings to educate members of Congress. I mean, I'll tell you a little secret. These congressional rooms are actually free if you work through a member of Congress, and you can hold all sorts of cool stuff there. Outreaching more into their local communities, like hosting events, collaborating with North Korean defectors to heal bad sentiments on both sides, because they really think that they're monsters to each other, and it's so far from the truth. I'm actually partnered with Liberty University. They're working on a 4-week education program on Korea, and it would be online and it would be accessible to everyone. So that would really help with educating the Korean youth and other members of the community. And I'm also trying to get grants to get the North Korean refugees that are here into a flight school, because they have an aviation school, and into their engineering program. And this also helps heal sentiments, because information is going to get back home that the Americans are not bad people. The South Koreans are not bad people. And the other thing I'm working on is getting the North Korean defectors to testify at the European Parliament, because that's possible. It's just about educating people. So we got that. We've got diplomacy that hasn't worked. I'm about to tie this up. But you know what's worked? Faith leaders. Faith leaders have gotten stuff done in North Korea. So I had the greatest honor to meet Pastor Lim, who you've probably heard of. I guess he has a big congregation in Canada. He's in South Korea as well. But he has done so much work. Literally just met with them on September 4th. In North Korea, he was able to create a nursing home, an orphanage, extensive efforts to start businesses, import and export food, glasses, fuel, and other goods, feed thousands of people. He bought the largest hotel in North Korea, and with for-profit business interest, basically he made tens of millions of dollars off of these business things to put it back into humanitarian purposes, and that funded missionaries. So you have one person. This shows you the power of one person with faith that goes in and makes changes for so many people. And you see that also on the China border as well. At the Global Studies professor at Liberty University did a lot of missionary work there. And so thank you for what you're doing. It shows you that faith leaders are making the change. And this is a spiritual battle. Believe strongly that prayer can fix this. Darn it, I don't see it here on my list what we want to do. Ooh, I had one more little thing. So August 15th is the Liberation Day from Japan. She's Japanese, for Korea. And we're trying to organize a global moment of prayer and try to do it with the council members, because the council is all across the US. And we wanted to hold something really big because there's a huge community in Los Angeles. And if we could just have just a moment for everybody to pray at the same time, I think that's a huge thing. I think prayer
Wonderful.
is the solution to so much, you know? So thank you for what you're doing. People on the ground, even just one person can make a huge impact in people's lives. And thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. It's an excellent presentation. And thank you for your vision, your energy, your clarity, and your substantial action to help people, especially in North Korea. So I'd like to ask a couple questions and have a little discussion. Reverend Jackson, you were instrumental with about 100 other clergy of founding the Korean Christian Leadership Conference. I think Reverend Suman Kim, who's a Presbyterian pastor there, is your chairman there. So tell us about that, and how did you see the work of Korean Christians together with American Christians helping North Korea?
Well, it's very important. I really appreciate Kimberly, what you were just saying, because one of the things that we have to do is we have to find, think about it. Koreans don't trust anybody. The North Koreans don't trust anybody. They don't trust anyone. And who can they trust? And so when faith leaders like the KCLC, which is the Korean Christian Leadership Conference, are doing things in South Korea, like feeding, just simply supplying rice, something's desperately needed to the people of North Korea. When they're making those kind of overtures, when they're showing them that we're not just talking about or just praying about it, but we're actually willing to do something, right? Help something. When they do that kind of work, then it makes a huge impact. And then this isn't something. It's not theory. It's not about it's not about some guy's great ideas, but they're really doing it. When we can make inroads like this, then we can build, bridges of trust. And I have to, you have to think about this also. The KCLC and American Clergy Leadership Conference, when we work together, what I notice is that they really look to, I didn't realize it before, how much Korean Christianity looks to the American Christians for leadership. It's really amazing. And so here we are, we're American pastors. And if you don't have a relationship with a Korean congregation or something in the US, you don't realize the influence that's there. And again, that's why we're doing this education with American pastors, so that they can understand what the conversation's all about. So that's very important. And I want to thank Dr. Hak Ja Moon for setting up, for actually founding that organization, because she realized the importance of bringing Christians from the U.S. and Christians in South Korea together and working towards a united and peaceful Korean, peninsula. So just one other thing, just that I couldn't help but just sit here and think about as we were just having this discussion. If you're Kim Jong-un, for instance, what's your out strategy? How do you do that? Where do you go? It doesn't bode well for a dictatorship at the end of the road. It usually goes 6 feet underground. So if you're that person, what do you do? It's very important, and I think we really need to think about that. And who can he trust? The trust isn't really in an American government that's not really, doesn't even want to have a conversation, right? So I really appreciate the education that you're doing, and also the work that you're doing in all these different areas. The Christian pastors, we want to find a way to do that humanitarian work, because it really makes a difference, and foster business as well. That's another thing that you mentioned that I find very important as well. If we can find ways to create bridges like this makes a huge impact and opportunity for peace to come. And so, yeah, thank you very much. I feel that very strongly, and I was wondering how you might feel about what is the answer to those things, Kimberly? How do you solve a problem like this? This is a big deal. When you got a leader, you know, is it going to unify on the South, this or that? How does it come to this? Where's sovereignty? All of those things.
I'm personally, I know I'm a little crazy. I have a no fear factor. I like horses. He likes horses. I'm pretty comfortable to be around. I'm not intimidating. I'm authentic. And I was hoping as a member of council, it would give me some safe passage into North Korea. And with my contacts with the president and minister of defense, it would allow me to open up talks. Because you know what? Nothing else has worked. You know, I mean, let's go horseback riding together and say, I mean, he likes some Americans. I'm not tied to the government. You know, I'm just a mom and someone who wants to help people. And again, nothing else has worked. So, I mean, what do we have to lose, honestly, at this point? That's why I think presenting him with a strong economic plan while still maintaining his sovereignty and then figuring out how to deal with the human rights situation from there. There has to be communication. I believe in communication. Maybe I'm unrealistic. I don't know. I mean, I'm meeting with the Taliban too.
Well, I think that
if you can't have a conversation, where you can't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
One example of a very successful program is Dr. Suzanne Schulte, who's been on our program many times. I know Kimberly knows her. She's been working with defectors, and she's just so effective. And she's also the director of the Defense Forum for Human Rights. And we've really had a great experience. She's actively doing things right now. Her programs are very easy to get. Defense Forum Foundation is called. And she's helped a lot of people defect from North Korea. She's very well connected with the Christian communities in South Korea. Reverend Jackson and Kimberly, you probably know her very well. But we need to really think about how to involve ourselves with that kind of activity. You can donate. They send bags of rice by balloons into North Korea. And we just had a wonderful afternoon over at one of her key person's homes. He had 22 North Korean defectors there. This was about 2 months ago on the Sunday afternoon. And the bag of rice, it's only a pound or two, you know, but that'll feed a family for several days. And they put a dollar bill in the rice, and they send over also some kind of a radio, or also they send also different kinds of things. The balloon goes over, they have to know when the winds are blowing the right way. And one of the defectors got it. I mean, thousands and thousands get it. And this one defector got information, got understanding, and he was able to escape from North Korea through that. And he talked to us that day. He was one of the defectors that came from that effort. I mean, we're talking about, you know, enormous effort, not sending a bag or two. We're talking about thousands of bags. Bill Gertz of the Washington Times says the number one thing that could help North Korea the most is that if we get more communication to the individual people. We had a defector speak to us on one of our Washington Times fact finders. It was very interesting, but he was the main trainer for the cyber security attackers. So interestingly, all those young North Koreans we were talking about, you've probably seen pictures of them sitting in a large hall where they're all in uniform, but their IP address is in China, which is interesting. So there's Chinese cooperation there. But the point is that he was also in charge of reviewing all of the different information that came into North Korea, movies, different kind of things that South Korea sent to North Korea. So he got a couple South Korean soap operas and he watched it, and it was so delightful. It had nothing political and just Korean to Korean. The cultures in North Korea and South Korea are identical in terms of culture, in terms of food and traditions, family traditions. It's really amazing. It's one people, it's not two people, it's one people. So this gentleman, he made the mistake of telling a colleague about that. He was immediately arrested, put in hard labor for a long time, a couple of years, I believe. And his heart changed towards North Korea. He was a top official in North Korea. So he was in charge of filtering all of the information coming in from the outside. But because he trusted one person, hard labor for, I think, 2 or 3 years, and then his heart broke towards North Korea. He realized there's no loyalty to the people, and so he escaped, came to South Korea. Another person we met was really, but the point is that what was shocking is when people see one South Korean video, it completely changes their understanding because they understand that the South Koreans are living miserably. They're under American domination. They're unhappy. Their false information comes to them. It's very hard for them. You'd think it's not difficult, but it's not easy. So I think I would suggest we advertise Tomiko-san about Suzanne's group, how we can donate, how we can be involved. There's so many other things. Kimberly will open the door for us to get involved too. I can see many things, and the American Clergy Leadership Conference too. So, John, what do you plan to do with the ACLC coming up soon, and also how does that affect North Korea?
Well, we're in April. We'll be joining together. We're going to have an international leadership conference there with primary focused on clergy from not just America, but America, South Korea, Christian pastors and religious leaders from all over the world will be gathered there. And we will have a summit about how do we bring peace to the Korean Peninsula. This is going to be our primary conversation. Now, I just noticed, what was it, 2 weeks ago? I believe it was 2 weeks ago. I saw an article. In fact, it might have been in the Washington Times. I can't remember where I saw the article, but it was said that the Korean government has a representative there who is in charge of reunification. That's their job, communicating to North Korea about reunification and everyone else on that matter. And they're trying to reestablish a communication line and a dialogue with North Korea. That's a tough feat, since I think it was Kim Jong-un that he destroyed the monument for reunification not that long ago. So it is a tough road to hoe. I mean, it's a lot of work to do. We're having to rebuild that dialogue again. It has suffered greatly in the last few years, and so I really want to encourage our South Korean pastors and help, because I know that they're like the conscience. I believe the pastors in South Korea are really the conscience of their people, and we have a job to do. And the American Clergy Leadership Conference wants to support the Korean Christian Leadership Conference and doing whatever it takes. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with supporting political leaders who understand the mission and the goal. Encouraging others to get on board, and it's not always like we spoke about earlier. The youth in South Korea, they don't want to hear that big sucking sound to the north, if that's what they called it when East Germany and West Germany reunited. This huge sound of all their money going north, but actually. They need to understand the possibilities there. I think it was I was in South Korea not too long ago, a couple of years ago, when they were talking about what the benefits and what the investment opportunities would be when North Korea opens. and when this unification takes place. There's incredible economic opportunity there for people who have the mind and the understanding. Christian pastors have to be also need to understand that importance, and this is also, we're guys, we're fighting it's a real battle. You're talking about a Korean leader, a North Korean leader that just executed 5 or 6 people just because they had a flood in their country and they didn't respond well. How do you respond well when you have nothing to respond with? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that people suffer when people, Dr. Jenkins, you were just talking about people who are able to escape North Korea. That doesn't bode well for the rest of their family, from what I understand. People suffer greatly when this types of things happen. How do we solve that? How do we fix that? And I think the Christian community need to understand that this land of Korea. You're right. It's one people, one family, actually divided, and they are taught in the North the most horrible things about the South. But I'm sure the South has similar feelings about the North, right? So how do you bridge that gap, and how do you make a moment where these two peoples can really sincerely long for their homeland to be one? I think that's something that the pastors, religious leaders can do, need to do, and need to start working towards. And so the American pastors, we're going there in large force. We're bringing close to 600 clergy to South Korea in April. We want to meet our counterparts in South Korea, Christian pastors in South Korea. We're looking forward to anybody's participation who want to, have that dialogue and start seeing where we can make concrete, really substantial efforts towards that peace and unification of South Korea. So, yeah, Kimberly, you want to join us in April? You're welcome to come.
Yeah,
Love
you.
to
I'll
have you there.
Consider that. Thank you so
Definitely.
much.
So I think, Kimberly, give some ideas of what we can do to open up the dialogue between Christians in America and with Christians in South Korea who are working on helping North Korea achieve freedom.
There's a lot of missionary groups that are doing really good work, so I would start to find those. Pastor
Right in
Lam,
this area, right from Centerville, Virginia, I believe. Some of those
there's
Korean churches are here.
That's true. And then the projects I'm working on locally, it just closes the gap to close bad sentiments between people, and that actually carries back home because North Koreans are still communicating with their family. I was actually at the North Korean Freedom Week, the same defectors that you heard speak, I heard speak at the Congressional Building. So I got to hear their stories as well. But I would look into some of those organizations to see how you can start helping out. You can contact me. I put it inside the chat. You can email me, Kim, Kim, the number 4, VA at kimberlylow.com, KIMBERLYLOWE.com. And a lot of you have different interests from what I'm seeing in the questions, and maybe I can find the right appropriate people for you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. One thing that everyone should know, there's now a blockage on any U.S. citizen going to North Korea. It's possible to go, but you have to get special validation passport through the State Department. It is possible to get, but you got to have very specific purposes. But after the pandemic, North Korea didn't even open up to China, which is really they're dependent on for much of their economic activity. But they refused to even open the door for China because they feared that whatever China brought in would have spies and all kinds of things that would hurt the North Korean control of everything. But at the same time, I think that the dialogue between North and and South Korea and the United States has to continue. There's no way to go forward without it. And because of the lack of interest, Reverend Jackson mentioned it, but lack of interest, the Biden administration really did think that we could just ignore it, and they wouldn't go forward very far. And but unfortunately, they got in a partnership with Russia, which is worse. It's worse than, and China doesn't like it, but they're not stopping it. The greatest influence over North Korea is China right now, and we have to work with China. We have to work with North Korea. President Trump made a huge advancement, and Secretary Pompeo's book, Never Give an Inch, really has some very interesting, coverage of what happened in his meetings with Kim Jong-un. And also our program with the Washington Times and the Washington Brief, we had another special person, Andy Kim. Andy Kim went with Secretary Pompeo to the North, and very revealing. And one thing he found out about Kim Jong-un, he was the only U.S. citizen that went to North Korea who spoke with Kim Jong-un in Korean. So they spoke Korean to Korean. I mean, conversing. And he went there a couple times. But he was very intrigued to find out that Kim Jong-un reads the South Korean newspapers the most. And it's not a good way to get the news. Going to the media for your only understanding, even though they may be good or they may be medium or not good, but going through the media to get your understanding for a national leader is very problematic. But, we really need to communicate. So we look forward to that. We'll have more forums. We'll be inviting Kimberly and Dr. Jackson. And Kimberly, you have any final remarks? We thank you so much. We have your information in the chat. Also, do you have Suzanne Schulte's organization, Tomiko, handy? If we can put that up there in the chat, that'd be nice. But
I would say, yeah. I mean, I'll put some stuff in the chat for her.
Good. And Dr. Jackson, if you and Kimberly give final remarks right now, go ahead, John. She's going to put Suzanne's information up there too. So go ahead. What's your final?
Thank you. There are a couple things for clergy. There are some organizations that visit churches on a regular basis. They do programs where they're helping people who escape North Korea, that type of thing. I have a little caution about those organizations somewhat, just because it's they're doing great work, and the people who are liberated, they're eternally grateful, of course. But also, I think it's important that we can go to these churches. These people can go to the churches for the first time. Maybe they will realize, oh my gosh, what is actually happening, and have a desire to want to change some things. So I think we need to open as many doors as possible, build real relationships that, bottom line, relationships that you can depend on. I know North Korea needs that. They need people who they can trust and feel like they can trust.
That's right. That's right.
So I hope the Christian leaders can kind of work on that issue. That's something I like.
Well, this forum runs every Tuesday, and every Tuesday we're covering some aspect of North and South Korea relationship and America's involvement. One of the things we found that's very helpful is cultural exchange. So the Little Angels was founded by our founders, Dr. Moon and Dr. Hachon Moon. Little Angels went to North Korea, first South Korean performing group to go to the North. And then there was a visit by the North Korean performers. And that relationship, also Father and Mother Moon went to North Korea in 1991, met Kim Il-sung, and that opened up the relationship. You never can underestimate the power of face-to-face dialogue. So that touched Kim Il-sung's heart. It passed on to Kim Jong-il, and finally Kim Jong-un sends flowers to the memorial service of Father Moon every year. There's an open communication, but that cultural exchange, we were very shocked. Through Dr. Manzarov, we met a professor at Columbia, and he's a really outstanding person. But he had organized and helped the North Korean Philharmonic play in Carnegie Hall. And
Wow.
it really, there's a video on it that I think we had a program on that, the exchange of North Korean orchestra coming to Carnegie Hall. And then also the whole area of music was really profound, really profound. So I think these things are great. So Kimberly,
Well,
you
if I
have any?
may, just one last thing. I just want to give um, Mike, I just want to say thank you to UPF for all the work that you're doing on a constant and regular. I mean, it's just an
Oh, thank you,
incredible
John.
effort.
Well,
You guys do an
you
amazing
help to
job.
make
The
it.
forums that you hold in America and overseas and in Korea on a regular basis are just making, I believe they're going to be the key to success. And I just appreciate you so
Well,
much.
thank you,
UPF
John.
is amazing.
Yeah, that professor's Professor Terwillinger. He taught in North Korea. He taught in the University Kim Il Sung University, and so anyway, he's really well respected by the Intel people in America. So it's all good. Cultural exchange is something we really can do. Kimberly, any final remarks?
Thank you all so much for what you do. Thank you for giving me time to speak and offer
Oh,
up some
we're honored.
solutions. And then please contact me if you need more resources, and pray, because prayer fixes things. It's a spiritual battle, and
Wow, very good.
and one person has so much power through God. So thank you all so much.
Well, thank you. What a way to end. Vice President Duggan,
Thank you.
final remarks. If you could come back, Tomiko. Thank you,
Let me mute myself.
Tomiko, for putting these programs together so well. So
Well,
if you bring
yeah,
Tomiko on the screen, we'd like to have her one last time to give us our forward-looking directions.
well, I'm so grateful that Dr. Jenkins, you are always accommodating for this important forum. And Kimberly and Reverend Jackson, we are so grateful in giving us some ideas and positive steps toward the unification of Korean Peninsula. Especially my classmate when I was in elementary school, whose parents were from North Korea. And because of propaganda by Japanese government, quite many people returned to North Korea a long time ago. And then we start receiving letters for the repatriation and asking food and some other things. And we understood that something government promised were not delivered. And then since that time, I am worried about my classmate who returned with parents North Korea. So that is the very first kind of experiences I got what North Korea may be like. So I'm very, very grateful for this presentation and looking forward to working with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to just share one thing very quickly. It's kind of very interesting. The Sejong Cultural Orchestra was there at Carnegie Hall, and our friend Dr. Terwillinger was the one that helped organize it, and that's just an amazing, amazing thing. Can you all see that? Hold on just a second.
We're not seeing it.
This is the orchestra from North Korea that performed at Carnegie Hall, thanks to Dr. Terwillinger. Very amazing, amazing performance.
North Korea?
And they are, one thing about North Koreans, they're
That's
just like
amazing.
the South Koreans. They're the hardest working people. They focus with incredible focus to become
Are they from North Korea?
extremely proficient. Yeah, the Sejong Orchestra from North Korea. Yeah. And we have a whole video on this. It was really beautiful.
They look like they're
We'll share
quite
that
a
next
mix of
time.
people.
Yeah, we'll share that next time. We have a video on that. One of our programs was recorded. It's fascinating, fascinating. So yeah, there's a lot more going on than people realize. But it's people like Kimberly that just don't wait for everything to be perfectly clear and simple. She just is going forward, pioneering a great engagement. And thank you for that. And you too, Reverend Jackson, same thing, the revival of Christianity and bringing that to Korea. You know, there's a tremendous network of underground Christians in North Korea, but no one wants to let anyone know about them much, but they're there. And I think they
Yeah.
get hope. They get hope from the things we're doing. They hear about it. And one day we'll all be free. And that North and South Korea will come together. That's a dream of Mother Moon and our work totally. Thank you. So thank
Well,
you,
thank you so
everybody.
much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you next
Thanks,
time.
everyone. God bless.
God bless. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon. Thank you
Thank you.
for all presenters.
God
Thank
bless.
you.
Thank
God
you very
bless.
much.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Thanks, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you. I'll call you, John.
All right. See you soon.
I need to get the great direction that's coming out of your work right now. I need to catch it.
By the way,
Run with it. Let's get offline here and we'll
yep, we'll do it. Thank you.